This video will be about how to write the methods section of your paper. This section should be the longest in your paper, and the purpose of this section is for you to summarize the methods that were used in the article that you've chosen. Many students have difficulty with this, and so we're going to look at a couple sample articles just to get a feel for what you might do for this part of the assignment. So the first thing that we want to notice is that often there is a summary of the article that can really help you to understand the methods. And so start by looking at the top section of your paper. And that can often help you. So it will summarize the methods and the results. The other thing that's really important to do is to figure out all of the acronyms that are used in your paper, and this can make the paper surprisingly difficult to read. So for example, for this particular paper, which is about sleep disorders, all of the acronyms are defined in the first paragraph, which is fairly customary. So the first time an acronym is used in a paper, it is spelled out. So in this paragraph, we learn that OSA refers to obstructive sleep apnea, and CSA refers to central sleep apnea. So obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea, and those are acronyms that are used in again and again in this paper. And then there's another one, SDB, which refers to sleep disordered breathing. So be sure to find the first instance of all those acronyms, and what I would do is make yourself a cheat sheet so that you kind of have that nearby as you're trying to summarize the methods. So it is important that you know what all of those acronyms mean, and you should use the full name in your paper. So if you're referring to Central Apnea Index in your own paper, write it out as Central Apnea Index. The second thing to do is to look at some of the data, because this can often help you to understand what the independent and dependent variable are. And so in this particular study, some data were collected from the children, and these are related and can be found in this table. So the tonsil size of the children was measured, their adenoid size, and also their weight. So those were considered to be important variables in this study. And the rest of the study was concerned with measuring the sleep quality of the children, which was done which is talked about in this section here. So those are a few tips for this article. Let's look at another article to get a better understanding. So this article is on stress and sleep disturbances, and so again it's concerned with sleep. Notice that here in our kind of abstract, it says a total of 103 students completed a battery of questionnaires. And so your job, if you were summarizing this paper, would be to describe some of those questionnaires. And again, you've got to find where those questionnaires are first introduced in the paper in order to be able to summarize them. And again, here we've got our methods. And so what I would do is I would begin by summarizing who the participants were. And then I would go on and try to summarize the procedures. And so this section here talks about the procedures. And again here, what you'll notice is that there's a whole bunch of acronyms. And so you'll want to, again, make yourself that cheat sheet. And this one actually has a little cheat sheet on it. And so these are important measures in the study that you should summarize. So GSDS is General Sleep Disturbance Scale, PSQI, Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. So these measures are what we call psychological tests. And so they have been normed on big populations, and so they are important outcomes in the study. So you want to be sure to summarize and list all of the different psychological tests that were used in your experiment. So there were several tests that were used in this study. And also notice that TST is total sleep time. And so total sleep time was also measured. So that's another important outcome measure of this study. So those are a few tips for one like this. And we'll just look at one more. And this article is on cannabis-related deficits in real-world memory. And this article has a very nice summary of the methods, but again, this summary isn't sufficient to really address the methods. So we have to go to the methods section in this article. And again, this article uses a psychological test. It actually uses several, but the main one is called the JAAM. And so it's very important when you're summarizing this article to know what the JAAM is. And it is actually defined, I think, up here in the, oh no, maybe it's not. It might be in the first paragraph again. So sometimes you have to look a little bit to find that. So generally the first time that the test is mentioned in the article is when it will be spelled out. And the JAAM is actually a test of memory. And so we have to just find that in the article the first time it's mentioned. And so that's an important part of the methods, is to indicate what sort of test did the researchers use in the study to measure. And I'm having a hard time finding this first instance of the, oh, here it is. So yeah, so I had to search a little bit, but you can see here that the JAAM is the Jansari-Agnew-Atkinson-Murphy scale, and it's designed to measure memory. So the authors of the test use their names. And you can also, in the results section, you'll see that, and even in here, so the JAAM assessment consists of 8 constructs: planning, prioritization, selection, creative thinking, adaptive thinking, action-based PM, event-based PM, and time-based PM. So this is the primary measure of memory that is used in this study. So it's quite important that you include that in your discussion of the methods. So if we go back to the sample paper, the methods in the paper that I chose were actually very simple. So it was easier to summarize. In my paper, there was an experimental group and a control group. An experimental group received the concept maps, and the control group did not. So it was a very simple design. And then the dependent variable was the test that the students took at the end of a course. And so the independent variable was the use of concept maps. So one group had them, one group didn't. And the dependent variable was student performance on 2 post-tests. So that's kind of your task when you're describing your methods, is start out by talking about the group. And so tell me a little bit about who is participating in the study. And then tell me if there's an experimental group and a control group, tell me what those two are like. And if you can, identify what the independent and dependent measures are. And again, typically the dependent measures are the different tests that are administered. So the different psychological tests. So the dependent measure of memory in the cannabis study was that JAAM memory test. So that would have been the dependent measure. In the sleep study, it was all of the different questionnaires about sleep. So see if you can summarize those things as well. So if you're having any trouble kind of interpreting the methods that were used in your paper, then just send me a message and I'll be happy to help you out. So I hope that helps. The next video will be much shorter. It is going to talk about the results section.